And it's just a weird... It's really hard to describe, really, like, what is, like, the allure to this, you know? Like, because, like, I really struggled with that. I'm really struggling with it now to, like, bring it to words. But it really is a game about the journey.
So, No Man's Sky, did you like it? Do you not like it? What's, what do you think?
I've been playing it for about 8 to 10 hours. I've jumped a couple planets. I've been to a couple space stations. I've mined an awful lot of stuff. And I've actually been having a really, really great time so far.
I am enjoying it immensely as well. And I'm sure you're going to get into this personally, Nick, when you talk about problems it may have. It does have a couple of issues, but it's a game that kind of, like, transcends that, I would argue.
I don't know, I think this is probably just a problem with the game in itself. When I spawned the very first time, there were a bunch of crabs next to me that killed me.
Right. Oh yeah, the exact same thing.
Yeah, which was, it was kind of bullshit just because I didn't even know you could melee or anything, and I'm trying to shoot these things. I'm looking at my ship and I die. I'm like, well, that kind of sucks. Like,
I think everybody went through that the very first time because it's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it was like Bloodborne was easier than that.
Yeah, the game doesn't really hold your hand at all. It just lets you do your thing, and it will give you, like, recommendations of things that you could do instead of just pointing to a thing.
Which I like. I like a lot, but I think it could have used a little bit more hand-holding just in the very beginning.
I think people are a little too used to hand-holding in most games now. And that's not like a good or bad thing. It also really depends on the game itself as to whether or not it works. Take, for example, and I'm not a big fan of the series or the games too much, the Dark Souls games. You know, they don't hold your hand for anything. If you build your guy wrong, if you do the wrong thing, you're basically screwed, no matter what you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, No Man's Sky, yes, it doesn't really tell you that much. It's all about experimentation, but the penalty for losing is very insignificant in No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
Other than maybe time.
Very, very little more than just a slap on the wrist. So, apart from the upsides, let's talk about a few of the problems that the game had. I think that the grindy elements, while fun still for me, might become really, really tiring all too soon.
It's a very inventory management type game, because one of the complaints I've seen, which I'll be honest, I don't think is much of a complaint personally, is that you don't have a lot of inventory space. You know, like you have a very limited number of slots until you upgrade your exosuit or your starship or things like that.
Which I actually like that a lot. I think if it was unlimited inventory, you would just sit and be like, well, I'm going to mine this forever, and then I'm going to mine this forever, and then you just kind of max out anything you...
Yeah, I do like that you have to think about your inventory space when you're out and about collecting stuff.
And it's a really good thing, too, because then you got to do resource management. Do you look for specific resources to build certain things for your exosuit? Are you looking for resources to sell and trade? Are you just trying to gather as much as possible and see what, then dump it off on the space station up in the sky? You know, there is choice there. There is a lot of choice, which is, again, and I think this is the real strength of the game. I said it in my impressions. It all depends on the player over everything else.
Yeah, that is definitely true. It doesn't really have a narrative per se, but it has emergent gameplay in spades, so you can make your own choices and you decide where you're going to end up and what you're going to do, or how your story is going to unfold, essentially, which I really like because it's a very interesting sort of universe with a lot of things to see and do. So I like that the game doesn't really tell you what you need to do unless you specifically go out looking for it.
Wait until you find like a lot of the lore and backdrops about some of the alien races. It gets a little freaky sometimes.
Oh, right.
Like you think like one thing about maybe the Korvax or the Gek, just based off of how they act or look or appear. But the entire backstory behind them starts to unfold as you find ancient alien ruins and relics and things like that. And
look forward to finding that out.
Oh, it's kind of great, and it's actually pretty. I would say it's well written. It is in the background, though. It's not like a foreground thing, but I do agree with you on the immersive aspect of that. You're participating in that by actively finding it, by reading it and learning it. You're not, like, seeing it firsthand in how the aliens interact. All the aliens themselves are very, like, one-dimensional, if you really think about it. You know, like, they don't have personalities, per se, as a group or a race. And that is kind of a negative. Also, and I'll just be honest and clear with you, yes, it is repetitive. That's the biggest hairline fracture for some people, I think.
Yeah, which I don't really get all that much, because, you know, show me a game that isn't based on endless repetition of mechanics.
Well, I was actually talking with Don a little bit about this, and he made a very valid point when we were talking about this, because I was discussing things with him too. And he said that it's more so the narrow scope of the feedback, in other words, that is the problem. You're doing the same things over and over. You mine for ore, you take scanning animals, you're looking for ruins, or picking flowers, or trading goods, or fighting off pirates. You're exploring different territories and all that stuff. It's all the same stuff. Every planet, no matter how it looks, has the same stuff that you do on it. So the loop itself is kind of small. It's very pigeonholed into specific things you can do. And when you do the same thing over and over and over again for long periods of time, yeah, it can get repetitive. Now, I would maybe, like, I don't know if you can agree with that or at all, Chris or Nick, on that one, like, because that is probably the biggest thing holding the game back.
I've got nothing against a healthy amount of grinding, and more often than not, I find that grinding in video games is sort of relaxing, and when you couple that with the way the game looks and sound, what it sounds like, I don't really view it as much of a problem as it could be, but I can certainly understand why a lot of people will get burnt out way longer before me than I would.
I see this as that kind of game where you play it when you have time to kill, but you don't say, "Oh, I'm going to sit down and play this for 9 hours," like Witcher, something like that. Like,
I did that today.
Well, I mean, after the initial sort of, the
wow
it's it kind of reminds me of what was that game on the DS where you had the weird little people, Tomodachi Life, where I would play it for a little bit, and then for about a year, I would just check on it and play it for like an hour or half an hour. I feel like that's what this game is going to be.
Then there's nothing wrong with that either.
Oh yeah, that's definitely true. You don't need to play through the entire game in like 2 weeks and play it every single day.
I don't think you can play through the entire game in 2 weeks. I think that's the thing.
Well, yeah, obviously because of the size. Yeah, that's true.
and like, it sounds like like I'm being like the negative Nancy a little bit, but like I'm with you on that grinding aspect. That sort of feedback loop that the game does have doesn't bother me as much as maybe other people do. And it's just a weird. It's really hard to describe, really, like what is like the allure to this, because I really struggled with that. I'm really struggling with it now to bring it to words, but it really is a game about the journey, about what you do versus how or where or when or why you do it. Sometimes.
Do you think a lot of the allure to this game is that it's a $60 AAA indie game? Like, if it had just come out, just kind of out of nowhere, do you think we would all be talking about it as much?
Yes, I would say yes.
Yeah, I think so, because the concept is novel enough to be attractive to a lot of people, because it's never been done in this way, and even with my 8 to 10 years, Jesus. 8 to 10 hours of playing the game, I already feel like I had my money's worth.
I mean, like, you hit the nail on the head when you said it's never been done this way. We've seen space sim games that have been very big before. Star Control series.
Elite Dangerous is a recent one as well.
Not even just Elite Dangerous. Go back to the original Elite, which this takes a lot of cues from, too. You got Freelancer, Privateer, all those space simulator games. They all have a lot of elements that kind of blend together. They all have the same busy work. The biggest difference between a lot of those, though, is that No Man's Sky doesn't really have like a plot that you can go through. It doesn't
Yeah.
have like a narrative to focus on. It's a rich enough world, I would say, but it's a world that you create, not a world that you're inhabiting. You know what I mean? And you learn to inhabit it as you create it, which is the real fun little bit there too.
Now, do you think this game would benefit from online, like essentially like an MMO sort of experience, or do you think it's better as a single player?
Yes and no.
All right,
yes
explain.
And no. Well, yes, it would be cool to just explore with my friends or just people I work with, whatever. That would be cool. But on the other hand, loneliness is such an important part of the experience. You are alone in this vast ocean of things you've never seen before. I think the solitude sort of outweighs playing with other people in this particular instance.
I think that if it was like a straight up MMO style game, it would lose a lot of the charm it has as well. That being said, I think that if it has a little more interactivity with players together, I think it could work in a very limited capacity. One example would be, and this is what I actually thought the multiplayer would have been, instead of it being kind of like what I'm assuming at this point, because they never really confirmed this sort of segregated universe that everybody's sharing. You know, I always thought it would be kind of like Journey for the PS3, where it's a very drop in, drop out, everybody's anonymous.
That's what I kind of
type of
hoped
multiplayer.
It would be, or not to bring up Destiny again, but when you're playing Destiny, you'll see other people messing around on a planet, and you can't go up and chat with them or anything, but it is cool seeing someone do something else. And I kind of hoped...
Yeah, just the fact that other people are there just doing their own thing sort of makes it more interesting to do.
Yeah, I kind of hope that would be it, because or just obviously it would be a lot rarer, but you get to a planet or something and you see a guy punching a frog, and you go, oh, look at that.
That's a thing people do.
It's very specific, too.
Specific.
Yeah. No, I don't think that would add too much. It would be fun to do something with random people or just encounter random people. That would be fun, but I can take or leave it.
It's also a really small studio, so I wasn't expecting a giant MMO sort of thing. I was just expecting a little bit more.
I think the biggest problem, and I'm going to preface this, and I'm going to go on record saying that a lot of the controversy surrounding No Man's Sky right now has no bearing on the review, in my mind. Because a lot of that is marketing, a lot of that is, the standard, patches that aren't really fixing everything fully yet, going to patch it as soon as we can type of stuff that we see today in modern gaming. Which is I'm kind of glad that first off, I was always going to get it on the PS4, but I'm kind of glad I did, because it is not only more stable compared to the PC version at this moment in time, but it also is allowing us to get through it so we can actually give out a more fair review of the game itself and how it plays, I would say.
Yeah, although I do think that mentioning the PC problems...
Oh, mentioning it is fine.
Should be done.
Yeah, it should be mentioned. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it shouldn't have a bearing on the score.
We're all on console, right?
Yeah, I was playing on console.
Yep.
I can't say for sure if the PC version is bad or not. I've heard a lot of people have had bad versions that don't work. I've heard some people that said, hey, it's working fine on my PC, here are my specs. I don't know. It seems like it's a very hit or miss.
Isn't that a problem with most PC games, though? Just because you have so many different types of systems, and
that's what it seems like.
I don't think I've ever seen a big game launch on PC and everyone go, "Yeah, it worked perfect."
That's what it seems.
Overwatch is a good example of a game that definitely.
Yeah, and I guess everything Blizzard puts out seems to work pretty well.
Yeah,
a lot of the argument.
There's an extensive list of complaints coming from the PC players for this game, and apparently a lot of it is broken, and it is broken for a lot of people, especially for people on Nvidia cards, I believe.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard I don't know shit about PC, for my language. I don't know anything about PCs. But you have C++, whatever it is, revamps and restarts, and Sean Murray.
I don't know.
Talked about how, hey, here's the min specs. If you have this, it should be working. If not, message us. We'll dig deeper and tell us what the problems are. And at the very least, they've been very proactive in actually addressing that. Hey, we got issues. We're working around the clock to fix them. Please be patient. To a lot of people.
In some cases, yeah, but in other cases, they are perceived as a developer who just picks and chooses things to respond to and work on, and just sort of leave everybody in the dark.
I think this is one
that's true too.
They probably should have maybe asked somebody at Sony to help with PR instead of just one Twitter account.
Do you think they're out of their element here?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think so. I believe them when they said that the launch was way more successful than they had hoped for or they had bargained for. So they're trying to keep up with the demand right now, which apparently is pretty hard.
Which I'm not surprised it did well. It's the most heavily advertised video game out right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so all that being said, what if you could add one thing to improve the game? What would it be?
Ooh. I think Robert should be the one to answer this because I simply haven't put enough time into it.
It could even be a little thing. For me, it's the field of view. It's just way too close.
Yeah, that does need to be extended a little bit. I noticed that on the PlayStation 4 version, and this is more of a technical issue. The terrain generation on the surface of a lot of the planets is really, really dodgy. It pops in and out. Sometimes it seems like on a whim almost, and that is an issue. I think it's honestly probably their algorithm, or however they create the generation algorithm, is basically chugging overtime just to make sure everything comes in and makes it all stable, especially on the PS4. But I think that can be improved if they actually work on it, patch it in. I wouldn't say to add that, though. That's more of a technical thing. In terms of gameplay,
just gameplay.
Things they would add. Well, I know they said that they wanted to add things like base building in future updates, as well as increase the algorithm's randomness, so certain animals and planets and things could look a little better.
Base building would be cool, but I don't know if that works for this kind of game where you're just supposed to be progressing forward.
See, I agree with that. I don't think it works too much either. Well, I disagree. I think it does not work too well, because I think it would. Everyone builds a base. It's well, why would I leave this system now or this planet? Because I have my base, that type of thing.
Well, yeah, it needs to be a choice, right? And they need to give you a reason to care about the base you just built, outside of the fact you yourself built it.
That's a good point, yeah. I guess it should be a thing that if you want it, you can do it.
For me, though...
Yeah, definitely.
For me, though, I think the thing that they need to add at this point is they need to add different... maybe different types of pathways that you can follow. Because currently there's 3 pathways. Yeah. And they all lead to different things. They lead to different endings. You got the standard goal of getting to the center of the galaxy. You have the Atlas path, which who knows what it does. And then you got the let me do whatever I want path, which literally is choose your own adventure. Yeah. I think there needs to be more pathways. I think there needs to be one where it's I want to be like a market mogul. So I want to control the galaxy by controlling all resources, Or, hey, I'm going to be a pirate. Let's go to war with these different systems and steal a bunch of stuff. I think there's a little play you can do with that, too. Because right now, a lot of the piracy and a lot of the trading is a little underrepresented in terms of mechanics compared to the exploration.
Yeah.
My other thing I would suggest is... sprint should be on the left stick. I think that's what put me off finding it for so long, is that I was clicking the left stick, getting frustrated, thinking why can't I sprint in this game? And then I happened to hit the right one. I just thought that's so weird. That's
everybody has a different control scheme, it seems. On
and I haven't looked if I could change it. I probably should check that, but it's just weird that that's by default that it's on the wrong stick.
You probably can't edit it. You can never do that on consoles for some reason. Yeah, exactly. One thing I do think we need to mention is how incredible the soundtrack by 65 Days Aesthetic is.
Even if it was the worst game ever, I would still end up listening to that soundtrack because it's pretty good.
Well, the brilliance in the soundtrack lies in the fact that it's a shit ton of tracks recorded that sort of fade in and out depending on what you do, and it's so well done that I had a couple of moments where I just couldn't believe that the music was randomly generated because it fit so perfectly with what I was doing at the time, and it transitioned like effortlessly into something else. It's great. It's a really, really good soundtrack.
So, have you heard the actual soundtrack on Spotify or YouTube? Yeah.
Yes. I listened to a couple of tracks. Yeah. I mean, I've been a fan of them for quite some time now, so I already sort of knew what to expect from the soundtrack. But it's way better than anything that they've done before the game. Really, it's so good.
Yeah, it's really good, and I never heard of these guys until that soundtrack. So
yeah, and they are. Well respected in like post rock and weird ambient electronic.
They've sold me. I am probably going to buy the album.
All right, so
for No Man's
let's
Sky.
do just your final thoughts on the game, and then I'm gonna ask one last question. That's the most important question of all. Right. So, Chris, right. what's your just sort of brief thought on it?
Right, it's a very interesting and vast world to explore, but it's a mile wide and an inch deep from what I gather, which is not that much of a problem because I get the sense that version 1.0 is a basis essentially on which they can build other mechanics and other features. So I'm looking forward to what this game looks like in a couple of years, or maybe a couple of months' time even, because there's so much they could expand on, and it would be a shame not to do that with a game this big and this prolific. So I'm in it for now. I'm in it for the short-term ride. Let's hope I'm in for the long-term ride as well.
I'm in such a weird position right now because I got to review it for the website, you know? And the reason why I say that is because on the one hand, I think this game, going by like how we do our scoring, you know, for the website, I think this game is a 10. And the reason why I say that is because of the sheer tech behind it. The whole technology, the fact that it's pushing the boundaries of what space simulations and survival-style games can do in some ways. I feel like that it deserves that score, even though it doesn't at the same time, because of the repetitiveness in some regard. Arguably because of the way the launch has been. It's a complex game that's really hard to explain to people, and it always probably will be that way. But it is a game that people have to experience for themselves, I think, and that's the key.
I agree.
The only way you will know if you like this game or not is if you play it. And and whether you do like it or not, you know, that's fine. This is going to be a divisive game regardless. It's a very indie-style game with a AAA budget and release, if you really look at it, because, like, you know, this is not like To the Gills molded for general audiences. This is for a niche audience, but it's a niche audience that I think is going to be big enough and passionate enough that's actually going to stick with it regardless of the problems to it. And you don't see that too much anymore in gaming. So, you know, I think it's a fantastic game. I don't know how I'm going to review it, because there are problems with it, and there are problems that will probably be stuck with it for a while. But it doesn't mean I don't like it. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop playing it anytime soon.
Right. Okay.
All right, and then final question, and I think this is the most important one. What was the name of your first planet?
I forgot.
Yeah, I don't know either, man. I didn't really.
I'll tell you the name of my favorite.
Let me name planets until I was like.
Let me rephrase that a bit.
Yeah, I'm the same.
What's your favorite name that you've given to a planet?
Oh, I can answer that. I have my favorite system. I called it the Pantheon system, and I named every single planet after a Greek god. So my favorite planet of that group was one called Bacchus, where it was basically this foresty-looking planet that was really red. And I named everything almost like based off of wine and hedonism on the planet, including the animals and the plants.
That is way more educated than mine, which was Pizzapotamus.
My name is Andrew Stretch. I am a writer, the head of event coordination, and a streamer.
What was your initial kind of impression within the first hour or so?
Playing the first hour for me, Yeah, I started at midnight and played until 1 when I got off-world for the first time. In honesty, the first hour was just confusion.
That's how I felt.
Mhm.
I get that it doesn't have to, but there were a lot of little things like I was telling the other guys, I didn't know that you could sprint till about hour, and I had just been slowly walking places, and it would have been nice to at least see like that kind of prompt up on the screen, or knowing that I could do a melee attack.
Well, an interesting thing about the sprint as well for the PS4 is that it's mapped to the right stick for some reason, and then your general scan is on left stick. That
which is really bizarre, because I had went to sprint and ended up just scanning and thought, well, I guess that's just how this game is, and I started kind of hopping everywhere for the first couple hours, and it just made me really not like it. But then once I found out you can actually sprint, it became a better.
And then you need to make sure that your armor has enough spare slots so that you can craft a stamina upgrade to, make it useful.
Yeah, I kind of wish this game had a skill tree of sorts. Even if it was one where if I plug in this skill, I have to take this one out as sort of a loadout, but just something separate would have been nice, not stuck to...
That was another thing that I think really added to the level of confusion, that it's confusion, but also here is access to all of these elements. You don't know what's good, you don't know what's bad, but you are going to find too much for just your ship and your inventory. And then you don't know, should I scrap this thing? Will I need it later? And if I only found it on this planet, is it going to show up at all on other ones?
Yeah, I think it would have been nice to have, I don't know, some sort of ship in space that do and come back to. I don't know. The inventory is kind of the game's biggest flaw right now. Besides massive.
Yeah, that was another thing that was quite interesting, is just how, on top of how vague the game is, if you just sit down and play it, but how vague it is coming from looking at all of... And, at TechRaptor, we see all of the news stories come through, so even if we don't read or write the news ourselves, we still see every single story title come in. And to go from how vague it was leading up to how vague the game is itself. I guess in that sense their marketing was quite on point, so kudos.
Yeah, I think it would have just been nice if they had just come out and said, hey, this is not a player game in the traditional sense, and just kind of explained that you're not going to just fly around and see your friend fuck around on a planet. They probably would have gotten a lot less heat. But I know a bunch of people that were excited for the game, thinking, yeah, my friends and I are all going to go on here and find planets and name them after things, and just it'll be like Destiny, but better. That's clearly not the case. So I kind of want to wonder what it's like for that person that doesn't follow up on game news and press that gets this game and then just sing Minecraft sort of.
Yeah, I think it would definitely be a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
But I do have people that are still... we're still not 100% sure whether there was meant to be something happen when you ran into another player. Kind of all Hello Games' response to, hey, why can't these people see each other, was the servers were really full.
Yeah, I think the problem is their responses kind of just led to people assuming things, and we all assumed that it was going to be more than what it actually was. So people are bitter about it. What did you think it would be?
In all honesty, I wasn't sure. I've been following this game for ages, and I've had so many friends. Every time something new comes out about it, they're like, oh, have you seen this? This game's going to be so good. It's going to be so good. And I've just kind of asked all of them, what can you do in the game? What is the purpose? And they're like, oh, you can go from planet to planet, and you can gather resources. And it's like, yeah, but is there an end goal? Do we know any of that? Because at the moment, all I'm hearing is this game's going to be cool because of procedural generation, which in itself, 18 billion planets, but if the difference between half of them is the different color grass, then it's kind of that same thing that Skyrim had a bit for me, is that it was a giant map, but what you could do was so far stretched between, and even that, there wasn't as much depth put into it, that it just leaves people kind of, wondering.
Which isn't bad. I just kind of wish they had said that from the get-go, so no, it'd be something else.
Yeah, definitely. It's not really buyer's remorse. It's buyers have been led on.
I also honestly think most of the pushback from buyers is because it was a $60 game that's advertised like a big AAA title, and which it's definitely not.
Not at all. But also you've compared it to Destiny a couple of times. One thing that really stands out is the UI of the pause menu and everything.
Yeah, it's totally Destiny.
100% Destiny, which is quite funny that I've had, friends say, I want to get it on PC. You can see that the UI is really, PC oriented for like keyboard and mouse. And I've looked at it and go, well, no, I have sunk 500 hours plus into Destiny using that exact interface. It's a good one.
I think maybe a little, like a slight tutorial when you open up a menu would have been nice.
Yeah, definitely. Or kind of maybe your first planet, you start in a base and they walk you, and in one room you're looking at a couple of things, and then you move to another room and you've got to craft a power cell to open a door, and then you're outside, and then you have access to resources and ships and stuff.
I think that would be great. Or even if it's that, and then something happens and you crash, and then the game begins. There's just no, you just kind of start bad. All right, let's talk about what we like, because this is a bit of a...
Sure thing.
We're kind of reaming on it, yeah. So what stuck out the most?
I do have to say it is really impressive that it's a game that you start on a planet that, the planet has the bits of lore to it, and you can learn alien languages and stuff, and that I can just get in my ship, if I'm over encumbered, whatever, and I don't know where the nearest store is on planet, I can just walk back to my ship, hop in, fly all the way out up to a space station where I know that there's a shop, and then fly all the way back down. And a lot of the planets that, have a variety of resources and stuff, I'll name the planet after that resource, so that, if I ever have to go back for whatever reason, that, okay, this is the planet, and this will be good for it, and, hoping that someone else might be using the same naming convention as I, that it might be then that I stumble across planet Titanium, and I'm in need of titanium, and so I can just go down and find some. That
is the smartest idea. Well, I kind of wish I named some of my planets that. I've been naming them Pizzapotamus, the hand banana, just things that don't really help me in the.
It was also a lot of fun the first time I streamed the game, which was the day after launch. That I was just naming planets after people in the chat, and that was a good way to build up a bit of interactivity.
So with me, the thing that stuck out the most is visually, this game is really impressive.
Definitely,
it's not the best looking game, it's not The Order or it's not Destiny or anything, but it has this really cool style to it, and the music helps a lot too, with that sort of synth track, acid washed colors. And
yeah, definitely, it's very eye popping. You'll come up over a ridge when you were only meant to be looking for, some more plutonium, and you look out and it's just this huge vibrant scene, and there might be a couple of weird looking giraffe things. It is a good sightseeing game.
Well, I even like how the equipment looks. The ships don't look like these hyper realistic crazy warships. They just kind of look like these silly, almost goofy 1960s sci-fi throwback sort of designs for your ship and your gun and everything, and I think that's really cool.
If you went to buy a starship toy for a kid or something, generic starship toy, that's what the model would look like.
Yeah, if you literally typed in generic space exploration, that would be all of the items in this, and I really like that. It's just it gives it a little bit of charm.
Yeah, definitely. And while this type of there are a large variety of games that do have this kind of go and do your own thing, and then there are the games that are completely linear. I've generally tended towards the more linear, but I am certain that there are the people who have started this game up and are already 60 plus hours in and enjoying the hell out of it. And I think that that's a great thing, that there is definitely an audience for this game. But I think that, the marketing definitely made it seem like a game for everyone. I am looking forward to this being a game that I come back to every now and then to see what improvements they've made and how they're making it an even larger experience in an audience.
Yeah, it's For me, it's definitely that game that I'll probably put a couple more hours in, and then from then on, once a new update comes out, I'll check it out.
So, you'll load up No Man's Sky for a bit and listen to a podcast or something.
What's your biggest takeaway from this game?
My biggest takeaway is that overhype in video games is a real big and dangerous thing. And probably that goes hand in hand with the overhyping is how you need to be clear and concise in a marketing campaign.
Definitely. I think that's the biggest problem with this game. It's not so much the game itself, it's everything.
Which is then, in turn, aggravated by the lack of responses.
Yeah. Also, that fucking run needs to be...
Yeah, I mean, it's like, would you really, map shooting to left trigger and right trigger to raise your weapon?
Yeah, this is what is this PS2 era shooter?
They were doing development with an N64 controller.
Apparently.